All right, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to move on and switch to English for the next hour or so. So I'm not going to answer the staff question, how the digital and social revolution is going to evolve in the years to come. What I'm going to do is just set the scene and share Forrester's vision about the evolution of digital and social. And I'm going to pick up some ideas from a colleague of mine, Josh Bernoff, who's Senior Vice President at Forrester, who recently wrote a book named Empowered, which I invite you to read, but you'll have an excerpt in the coming slides. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this person, the woman Heather Armstrong. I guess few of you. I wasn't before reading the book, and actually she's quite famous in the US. She is well known among the mom community. She has a blog with 350,000 unique visitors, and she wrote a book about motherhood. She had a second baby probably 2 years ago, and so she decided, which looks quite obvious, to buy a new washing machine, a Maytag. Maytag is a famous brand in the US. The trouble is that she had no full customer experience. So she called the customer call center and she said, "Do you know who I am?" Unfortunately, the person at the customer care center was not available, was not aware of her name. So she said, "Well, if you continue this route, I'm going to tweet about this." And obviously, the person at the customer care center was not aware of Twitter. So she decided to post this tweet, do not ever buy a Maytag. The trouble is that she has 1 million followers on Twitter. So I'll let you imagine the impact on the brand. That's just one of the examples when you mistreat the wrong customer. The same thing happened with Dave Carroll. I'm sure you're not familiar with him unless you're a fan of country music in the US. And he too had a nightmare with United Airlines. They broke his guitar. So he decided to publish a song which he broadcasted on YouTube, United Breaks Guitar. And he had 5 million views on YouTube and up to 10 million at the end of last year. This was picked up by the press, by Forbes, and by many, many, many press. So lots of bad press for United Airlines. So he just, take an example to say that, social media means that customers own the relationships as much as companies do. So it's really about a new paradigm in terms of marketing where the funnel doesn't end with consumers. It's not just about eyeballs and, I would say, the marketing funnel as we know it, from awareness to purchase. It's increasingly about supporting, empowering, delighting, making customers fan, and making them broadcasting their experiences with brands so that they can influence customers back. And so there is a circle back in terms of influence. So this notion of influence is extremely key in the digital and social space. And that's why we believe at Forrester that you need to understand online influence. And you're probably familiar with this ladder because I presented it this morning for mobile. And we have actually this ladder for social as well, looking at the bottom at the ladder of inactives up to on top of the ladder, the most sophisticated social users are the ones we refer to as being creators, Dave Carroll or Heather Armstrong. They publish blog, they tweet, they're very active, they upload video, they broadcast themselves on social media. And they're the influencers, the ones that are going to have an impact, whether good or not, on your brand. And if we look at this in Europe, you can see that now the majority of online Europeans are engaged with social. If you look at the percentage of inactives, it's just 32% as of 2010, when it was up to 43% 2 years ago. So this has dramatically shifted. And obviously, creators, the ones that are the most, I would say, influential, represent roughly 15%, slightly less in France, actually, but still. They are the ones that are the most influential with, I would say, conversationalists, sorry for the pronunciation, the ones that are active on Twitter and that update their Facebook pages. So the idea is not just that look at these metrics per se, but look at what it means for your own brand, because obviously being on Facebook or Twitter, it doesn't make any sense if you don't know how your own customers are using social media. And actually, if we look, beyond this, it's not just about empowered customers. It's also about empowering employees, because often brands and companies are lagging behind, and there are 4 key technologies that they need to embrace to be on top of consumer behaviors. One is obviously smart mobile devices. We've been talking about this today, and we'll talk more about it tomorrow. Social technology, pervasive video, and cloud computing services. So those are the key groundswell technologies that will empower employees to better serve customers. And that's why we've developed this notion of HEROES, an acronym standing for Highly Empowered and Resourceful Operative, which means that there are employees within companies that understand these new technologies and that use them to better serve customers. And I don't know if you're familiar with Twelveforce. This is actually the Twitter help force from Best Buy. Best Buy is a US company who owns actually the Phone House here in Europe. And they have created a Twitter help force where more than 2,500 employees can interact with consumers anytime, anywhere. And that's one of the many case studies that we've published in this book, Empowered, published by Forrester. So I just wanted to give a couple of ideas to set the scene, and I'm gonna hand over to Cedric Giorgi, who will moderate this panel and will give you some answers about how the digital and social revolution will evolve in the years to come. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just a few. Yes, thank you. Quelques mots avant d'appeler mon panel. D'abord en français, ensuite je vais repasser sur l'anglais. Vous pouvez voter sur l'application lemobile 2.0, voter ou poser vos questions plutôt cette fois-ci. Posez vos questions sur l'appli lemobile 2.0 ou le site mobile, l'onglet questions. So same thing in English. If you want to ask any question, you can do it on the mobile website or on the app. And I'd like to call all the guys from our panel. Please join me on stage. I'll introduce you. I'm really happy to have them because it's the only one that we have in English during the Mobile 2.0. We tried with Christophe to have people coming from all around Europe. So I hope it will be very, very interesting for you guys. I keep this one if you don't mind. So I'll be in front of the stage. Just a few words, not only as a co-editor of Tech and Trends, I'm here as Europe Director of Seesmic, a US company in the social media scene. We have a tool that can aggregate all your social media. That's why I'm moderating this panel. Thank you guys again. I'm really happy to have you. We have, actually you're gonna present yourselves, that's much better. Let me start with the French of this panel. Eric Scherer, you're Director of Future Media at France Télévisions. What does that mean? What are you doing? What's your job?
Well, I just joined France Télévisions less than 2 months ago. I was working at Agence France Presse, the French newswire, for a while as head of strategy. I joined the new team of the new digital team at France Télévisions to try to understand what is already coming, which is basically the wedding between the internet and television, the so-called connected TV. So we will try to make sense of it and to see how we will react and work on it.
Okay. Next to you is Robin Grant, Managing Director of We Are Social, an agency based in the UK and in France.
Indeed, yeah. So yeah, I'm the MD. We're a specialist social media agency. We set up about 2.5 years ago now. About 75 of us worldwide, including a team of 10 here in Paris, run by Sandrine Placereau, who I imagine some of you will know. So yeah, and what we do is, it's very much about helping brands to, understand the changes that social media is bringing to the marketing and advertising landscape and helping them deal with that.
All right. Next to you is Mark Kramer. One of your activities, if I'm right, is head of marketing and PR at Yasssu, but that's not the only thing you're doing in the mobile scene. Please explain us what you're doing.
Yes. Well, I'm working with Yasssu. It's quite an innovative startup, we were mobilizing media. We're trying to bring media accessibility to everyone, irregardless of internet connections or where they are in the world. I'm also teaching in university. I'm a university lecturer in new media and communication sciences. And so I'm bringing a research theoretical perspective and bringing it into practice. And I think what I hope to bring here to this panel is more the theory that is behind this. And I'm also working within medicine, mobile health, things like this.
Interesting. Next to me is Giles Corbett, head of On at Orange Vallée. Explain us a little bit about, without spoiling what you will present after, but what is Orange Vallée and On?
Okay, good afternoon. So Orange Valley is an entity that gravitates at the periphery of the Orange Group, at the periphery and sometimes clashes with the rest of the group. It's tasked with focusing on disruptive innovation, i.e. those areas of innovation that could undermine the carrier's traditional business model. So it's a fascinating place to be, where we're actually asked to focus on building the kinds of things that the operator is most worried about. And I'm here today with respect to a project called On, and On is really focusing on what happens when everything in your mobile goes social. What does this mean? How do you manage the fact that all of a sudden everything in your address book becomes connected and you could share stuff with everybody? How do you manage the issues of identity, of privacy, of defining what is secret, what is private, and what is public? How does all of that work?
Yeah, we will come back to that in the panel. But my first question will be, could we have the social web as we know it without the mobile industry and mobile phones? I mean, Facebook and Twitter are huge. Don't even talk of Foursquare or something like that. But what do you think, guys? The social web is huge, and what part did the mobile play in that? Anyone of you?
I mean, I think, you're right that the last couple of years it's made a massive impact, and I think that's more to do with people's actual usage behaviour rather than actual penetration of the internet. I think Facebook would have been massive regardless of mobile devices. What's really interesting is the amount of time people are spending on Facebook and various other social media services, and that's because they're able to do that from wherever, when they're on a bus, when they're at home watching TV, and that's increasingly what they're doing. I think if you look at historically, the way social media developed, it's changed a lot because of mobile, and I think that's something we'll probably address part of this panel.
Okay, so my view is that mobile has had hardly any impact whatsoever. I think that actually the social web as it exists today is very much an online-driven experience that isn't actually particularly influenced by real social behavior either. And I think that what's going to be very interesting is seeing how new services are going to go and bring around changes in which the mobile component actually brings the social behavior back into the social web, and then we'll be able to talk about an impact.
I think when we talk about it, when I heard you say it, information technology, we tend to forget that the social web is actually about people. So people and relationships have always existed, even before the internet, before Facebook. And just because I have 1,000 people...
Are you sure?
Yes. Just because you might have 1,000 people or 1,000 friends doesn't mean that these are actually active parts of my social network. When I look at my phone book, is actually my real social network, and it's a stronger tie. But to answer your question, does it make an impact? I think it enhances and augments our current social structures, and between friends and family, it strengthens it more. And I guess on the periphery, the other contacts or acquaintances or colleagues, those are nodes which are potentially stronger through the social web. And it's about this co-presence. I can communicate with someone in Austria through Skype or text or through this video currently. But that doesn't mean that we have to share the same space.
Just about what you were explaining, that our address book is our first and main social network. It's something I've heard dozens of times since I'm in the mobile mobile world, but I don't think any startup or huge services actually leverage it. And I will be tempted to say that
Cedric,
right now that's a Facebook.
That is very, very sad news. Indeed, massive opportunity in the area that we are focusing on with the Life is Better On project is trying to see how I can go and use what is, in effect, this real social network, the thing that has the people I'm constantly communicating with, be they my colleagues, my former colleagues, my family, my wife, my ex-wife even. These are people with whom I have very, very different relationships, and yet they are all together in this address book. Well, that is a massive opportunity. So I agree with you. Nobody has yet managed the transformation, but we're beginning to see elements that raise hope. Maybe I can talk about those later on.
And it's not too late? You don't think so?
Absolutely not.
You want to react? No, not especially. All right. And again, wait a minute. Do you have any examples of companies that were big in the social mobile area? Perhaps for you guys, we can give a few names. Mobile social networks and mobile communities. Do you have any names in head? I think that's one of you guys. You're multitasking.
Actually, I think there was a company, a startup called Zip, ZYB. I think they were purchased a couple of years ago. I think by, I didn't want to say Vodafone, but your competitor. And it actually leverages the phone book. And it takes information from there over social networks. I don't know exactly how it works currently. I'm wondering how that's within the Vodafone ecosystem.
Okay. And
but I think Facebook would be the best example because you connect your Facebook with your address book and communicate through there.
I'd like to give the example of Viber. Viber isn't a social network as such. It's a peer-to-peer voice-over IP communication service. So it's a bit like Skype. Until a few months ago, I think most of us would have predicted that there was no room any longer for a mobile voice-over IP service, that in effect Skype had trusted that space. It was fascinating to see Viber launch in December and within 8 days generate 3 million downloads. And the way they did it was just connecting the address books. Working out that in my address book, I happen to know Cedric, so as soon as Cedric gets it, we're hooked up. It was completely transparent. It was brilliantly well executed and has shown just how the address book can actually be a viral mechanism in the mobile space.
Perhaps a question for you, Ruben.
Well, yeah. But it's really interesting. Some other services like that. So Kik being another example, which is the team behind the BlackBerry messaging service. Launched the standalone app, and maybe not quite as fast as the one you described, but they went to 3 million users in under 3 months, which is astounding. And then some of those other, sort of group-based apps. So Facebook has just acquired a company whose name I forget now. But again, around the formation of groups using mobile phones and making that early. I'd say I'd point out one thing is that sort of players that rely on existing mobile infrastructure, so text messages or telephony, actually have a disadvantage compared to pure play internet startups, that they have all of those sunk fixed costs to deal with in terms of any messages going through the network. So obviously they need to get more funding and deal with that.
Okay, so you think it's possible to have pure viral services on the mobile? It's a question I want to ask because, for example, Foursquare, that was seen as a mobile startup, actually they leverage web virality with other social networks. So do you have other examples of mobile social network, perhaps MiG23 or Mocospace, that really went viral only on mobile?
I mean, the question is, why would we even look for one? Why try and create this separation? Why wouldn't a company starting up a mobile service actually seek to take all of the advantage possible of the fixed virality? Having said that, Viber was pure mobile.
I mean, and again, Kik is a great example of that. But they're tried and tested techniques. They've been around since Hotmail, really, in terms of the way that spread through viral mechanism. Just in fact that there's a little Hotmail signature in people's email messages. Things haven't changed much. They got more advanced. And I think that some of that engineering work you talked about, where they really got the connections right between new users and as they came on stream, is really interesting. I think the mobile space again suffers from a bit of a disadvantage in the sense that if you launch a new website, a new service, and you're pumping out content, that to a certain extent you gain traffic and attention and users through search. There's no equivalent in the mobile space for mobile apps. I mean, yes, you can search the App Store, but you're not getting that organic search traffic arriving at your site, which can, for a lot of startups, makes a massive difference. So the challenges are there, but obviously, again, you build a good app and it spreads through, word of mouth, whether that be engineered into the app itself or people actually speaking in the real world.
I think, Cedric, how I understand your question is, how's the social web changing the mobile? Because if you look at virality and you look at social networks, face-to-face or point-to-point, a virus probably will spread slower, but with the mobile, it's sort of enhanced. I can contact literally hundreds of thousands of people through my mobile phone, so the spreading of that application or thought or idea is much greater, irregardless of face-to-face contact. So I'm saying, again, when we say social web, you're looking at the infrastructure or the tools. It augments in sort of like a hyper-virality. Otherwise, you have to look at mobility. What is mobility?
It's interesting what you explain, because if we look at the mobile market on another point of view, it's something in silos. With all these apps, they cannot communicate together, and it's very hard. And actually, it's a job of a developer to keep the user inside his app and not to. There isn't this conception of hyperlinks actually between apps. So, do you see that as a problem for virality or for?
It goes back to the point that it's people who are designing these tools, and it's the people's culture that is sort of embedded into this. So the reason these tools don't do this is because we have made it that way. So the question is, how can we create tools which, whether semantically or in other forms, are able to connect and make these connections independent of us? I think this is where you'll find really interesting advances.
I mean, I do think there's a massive opportunity at the App Store or at the social network level for that sort of behaviour. I mean, the first thing I did, when I got my iPhone way back when, was to go around to my other friends who had iPhones and ask them what apps they had installed and why they liked them. And it's not a massive leap to imagine that iTunes or the Android store telling you what apps your friends are using, based on existing social graph data, either from your phone book or from Facebook. Both using a lot or just have installed. And again, Facebook has the opportunity to do the same to a certain extent for apps that are plugged into Facebook's social graph. So I think that's something that's fairly obvious. I think will come soon in terms of discovering apps, that are useful to you because your friends are using them.
One of you guys, I think it was you, Mark, explaining that mobile device is a way to interact with people. It's something we have on us, and we can show anything. Eric, this question will be for you. We often say, mobile device is something to interact with other device or to bring interactivity to medias that don't have such an interactivity. How do you see the mobile at France Television? If I can express like that.
Mobile will be first. The first level of usage of mobile will be, of course, a device for our content. Obviously, we will launch a new application quite soon on the iPhone and the iPad. We'll follow it on We'll follow it on Windows and Android. But this is only to spread content on other platforms. To link mobiles, social, and TV, I think will be the role of smartphone and tablets vis-à-vis the connected TV. We are pretty convinced that the smartphone and the tablet will play a key role as a remote control of the connected TV, and the smartphone and the tablets will be the elements of the social TV, not the big screen, but the smartphone and the tablet on your knees, in context with the TV, to share the experience, to share big events live on TV, and this will be the second or the third screen to see TV and to interact. We think it may not be on the main screen, but most on the smartphone and the tablet.
So you think we will have our Facebook or Twitter accounts on a tablet on our knees, and
yeah, it can be Twitter, it can be Facebook, can be a lot of other application of communication through the tablets and the smartphones, and in relation with the TV. Yes, and this will be in some midterm, and we are in the process of development of a format called HBB TV, which is a hybrid format for connected TV, where we will have Twitter and Facebook on the screen as well.
And are you working with all these startups and services that are trying to aggregate what is said about a TV show on Twitter or Facebook? I think we will have a startup called Télévisions in this area. Is it something you're looking at a little bit?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, Jacka or devantlatélé.com or something. Have you heard of them?
Not yet.
Not yet, so okay, all right. I give you the links. Do you have any reaction to that, you guys? It's not, perhaps you, I mean, you're the agency of this panel, so how do you make your brands, if we go to this part right now, how do you make your brands use the mobile as a remote controller of anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think on the, if you look at the TV industry side of things, obviously, the TV stations, the channels are brands themselves, and there's some really interesting use, all around the world of some of the bigger brands in the space, some of the big franchise TV shows. So, for example, X Factor in the UK. Using social media really to enhance the experience, for their viewers, and therefore trying to make those programs much more of an event. So using social media to draw in a larger audience that feel that, wow, everyone's talking about this, everyone's watching this, therefore we can't miss it. And therefore, obviously sell more advertising off the back of it. And also, quite interestingly as well, using social media both before and after the show to do the same thing, but also to drive revenue in other ways. So, for example, through advertising revenue on YouTube views. Again, ITV in the UK learned a very valuable lesson a couple of years ago, where a segment from the X Factor went viral, and they made no money out of it whatsoever. They soon corrected that mistake. And again, have built that into their programming ever since. I think if you widen that out to brands in general and their use of mobile, I mean, there's no compulsion on brands' behalf to use mobile unless they see a commercial benefit in doing so, and we wouldn't advise them any other way. I think small businesses and high street retail brands, I mean, there's obviously mobile is going to be an increasing part of their marketing mix through location-based services. I mean, Facebook Places and to a lesser extent Foursquare already making an impact in their area. For brands that don't necessarily have physical locations, then I think the usage of location in particular is going to be more rare, but that doesn't mean there won't be creative executions from time to time that really take advantage of that. So, for example, Jack Daniels have recently done a campaign with Foursquare around you know, the festival in New Orleans and having people check in at a billboard rather than a physical place and do some stuff like that. I think then there's, you know, some other brands doing some pioneering work in this example, and I should caveat the fact that Orange are actually a client of ours, but, you know, obviously the on product is really interesting, but then also some of the other apps that Orange are pulling out to their customer base. So, for example, you know, every year Orange sponsors the Glastonbury Festival in the UK, and they build a very good social app around that event to actually really, you know, get their brand association of their sponsorship of that event across. And again, run something called Orange Wednesdays in the UK, so you get 2-for-1 cinema tickets every Wednesday, but they've built, again, a social application on your mobile all around that in order to encourage usage and sharing of that.
Eric, you wanted to react? Just a few words before Mark. Yeah.
Not to react, to add a few words on TV, because I didn't mention it. I think one of the big challenges we will have on the connected TV is to find or to see what will be the balance between search and recommendation on social issues. It will be it's in front of us. We have no clue yet. We don't know if one or the other will win.
Sorry, please.
But of course, recommendation is will be closely monitored, because we believe in this area very much.
Mark.
I wanted to broaden this idea of brands for a second. Here we are in France. This is the birthplace of modern culture in many ways. You know, liberty, égalité, and these are sort of brands. In a sense that look at these thoughts or ideas. What's happening right now in the Middle East is sort of leveraged by the social web and mobiles. And call it a brand, or call it an idea, or call it the fact that people want to make a change in their lives or make certain choices. I mean, the mobile is an incredible tool to help cause social change. So look beyond just brands, but look at the social aspects as well. And another way to look at it, look at Barack Obama as a brand. If it wasn't for the mobile or social web, I don't think you would see Barack Obama in the White House. It's another example.
Okay, I don't know how to react after this. I mean, it's, yeah, for sure.
It's trying to broaden.
Yeah, sure. And perhaps if you guys want to react to this, so I can find my next question. Yeah, how the mobile has changed, or yeah, okay, let's put it like that. Do you think the social web using mobile right now had a huge or just a big impact on the revolutions that we had in Tunisia or in Egypt? Tough question, I know.
Sorry, the question is, do we believe that social media had an impact on what happened in Tunisia? Is that the question?
Yeah, yeah. What kind of, how big was the impact?
I think that's a relatively simple question. I think the answer is yes, it did, and it was big.
And that's it.
Well, I mean, the thing that's fascinating is just seeing how complicated it was in the past for groups of people to get together at unpredefined places or to go and circulate agendas. I mean, and it can be anything from organization of movements in Tiananmen Square to rave parties in London. Getting large groups of people coordinated is something that mobile is enabling in a way that has never been possible. That's the longer answer to yes and big.
Thank you for this great long answer.
But I think we have to go beyond the thought of just products or services, but experiences. And if you look at, I'm sure France Television had broadcasted a lot of what's happening in the world currently. And in many ways, it's co-branded because they're supporting the fact that they're showing the world what's happening is a way to identify oneself. So in that sense, social web and mobile co-branded. But we're just at the beginning here. And what's fascinating is that the discussion, a panel discussion like this is one way forward to get people thinking different questions and to build upon this. And I think a conference like this is also making a positive contribution to to reflecting, okay, where is it that we want to go? And how can, for instance, France also cause another revolution within mobile?
Interesting.
Yeah, I got asked a similar question at a conference last week, and it was like, you know, how do the revolutions in the Middle East apply to brands? I was like, well, they don't really. You know, I mean, I think we do. You know, and again, I really do believe that, you know, social media had a massive enabling effect, but I don't think we should, you know, ignore an awful lot of other factors too, which was, you know, a whole generation in the Middle East without much future in front of them economically, you know, who had grown up on, you know, on a diet of Western-style television, even if that television came from Al Jazeera rather than CNN. Again, this spirit of openness and transparency that they weren't, that the incumbent political systems didn't represent. So I think, you know, there's a whole range of different factors, social media being one of them, but, you know, television being another, that had an impact. And if you actually look at, you know, the usage of social media amongst those populations, you know, it's not particularly significant. I think what was significant was the organisers. You know, not that there was any necessarily formalised, you know, structures in place, but those people that helped to enable those processes to happen were the ones using social media, not necessarily, you know, every single person at each of those demonstrations.
Yeah, I need to add something then. I mean, I am not arguing that social media was a cause for revolution. No, the regimes were the cause for revolution. Just saying social media may have made some of the organization easier. Again, one of the questions that I think you've asked about how maybe mobile has evolved in the social media space. I think one of the other ways, or one of the other interesting angles, is how social media, social communications are fundamentally changing mobile rather than the other way around. And I think one of the things that's very interesting is to go and look at how companies such as Facebook, that started off as a simple way of sharing your views on other people around you with those who are interested in them, has evolved to become actually one of the most sophisticated communication platforms out there. What happens when a Facebook or a Skype or a Google decide that they are actually your mobile service provider, that they are the people who provide all of the intelligence in switching your calls, in identifying how to go and route them between people, in being able to go and provide your correspondence with information of your whereabouts or your availability or your mood or whatever. These companies have the power to completely undermine what the mobile business is today. And I think that is one of the elements that is, I mean, definitely from the perspective of companies such as Vodafone or Orange, is one of the more interesting challenges.
I want to come back to the previous topic for you, Eric, because you were working at AFP, now at France Télévisions, and you're in the business since a few years, if I may. So how did you see this revolution in Middle East, and especially in, regarding the content that was created by all these guys, all the information that was broadcasted by mobile? How did it change actually the way French media outside of the action covered it?
I don't like the word of citizen journalism, but I do believe that, of course, now to collect the facts is now shared by the people, by millions of people, by millions of phones, of mobile phones. So mobile phones is a tool to collect information, to collect news. Now you have to check the news, you have to check the facts, and this is the work of journalism, still. Even though we have this huge amount of content of facts and news provided by the crowd and by the people on the ground, which is very useful, because very often journalists are not able to be where they are not able to be where there is a crash or an accident. This is one of the main impacts for journalism.
We have a few minutes left for questions. I'll check my tablet to see what you guys wanted to ask. If you don't want to use the app, just raise your hand and cry, and I'll give you the mic. What do you think about Twitter and Facebook inside Xbox Live? Quick answer, anyone? Is there Xbox Live?
No, I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I think what makes Twitter and Facebook being inside Xbox is more the connectivity it brings to games. So, you know, when actual games start hooking into your social graph, that's where it gets interesting. I think the idea of using the TV as, you know, it being the first screen, you know, as a platform for those social networks is less interesting. People will use, you know, their laptops or their mobile phones for those sorts of interactions. I think it's when it starts getting baked into the games that it starts to get interesting.
No questions? Yeah. Come here, please. I give you the mic. Do we like this way?
Thank you. A question about what happened in Tunisia and Egypt and Libya and a big part of the world today. Also in London, because young people are revolting today against, for example, difficulty in university and so on. Don't you believe that what happens for example, in Tunisia is not only a coordination of young people during manifestation and so on, but also the fact that there is an opinion that will be formed quite instantaneously. For example, I have, the question is, there is an important influence in political opinion in social media and in mobile usage also.
I think I understood the question is how is this changing society? Is it okay, so how is this changing society and politics? I think when we democratize technology, I mean, we have contracts that we purchase, so somehow we are using these tools. We use it for different reasons, but it's not just a business transaction. I mean, these are reshaping the way we communicate or how we communicate. And for me, it's not a coincidence that a lot of this sort of a domino effect of changes that are happening in the Middle East is because people are becoming more aware of what's happening through these mobile channels, but also becoming courageous that it's not just the community that's rising up for change, but the world is also co-witnessing this and in the same time giving support. And these tools also create a form of transparency which forces the change, because there's a term called surveillance, which, whether you call it user-generated content or citizen journalism, these tools are becoming nodes within society and bringing to surface what's happening, whether it's good or bad, and there has to be change.
And it's going back to what Thomas presented before the panel, it's exactly what brands have to experience. One example, just for the end, Nescafé in Canada, one guy just tweeted that he was waiting for his coffee for the last 40 minutes or something. And actually the headquarters in Switzerland saw this tweet, so they called the Nescafé shop in Canada to just tell the guy, hey, please go to this guy, give him his coffee, or you're fired, or something like that. So it changed the brands too. A question perhaps from my side to use the fact that you three guys are outside of France. In a few words, how is the mobile market there? Is it iPhone big, Android big? How is it? You and you, or you, Robin, if you have any numbers.
Android is set to rule the world. It just sort of dominates everywhere. The iPhone is remaining as the iconic product, but the volume is all moving towards Android. And the rest, good luck.
And in terms of social media, Twitter is huge in UK, right? In France, it's still small.
Yes, it developed very rapidly as a messaging tool. So It's I don't actually have figures on how the user base is split up, but a lot of anecdotal evidence on teenage kids, etc., just using it instead of SMS. So as using the direct messaging function mainly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd follow up on that. I mean, Twitter is bigger in English language markets. That seems to be the way it's developed. You know, they've got that same sort of penetration in the UK as they have in the US, broadly speaking. But you know, the rest of Europe, it varies quite drastically between markets, and especially the growth rates in those markets. Actually, you know, growth in Germany and France seems to have plateaued, but if you look at Spain, it's still growing quite fast, which is really interesting. Japan, Twitter is absolutely massive, much bigger than it is in the US or the UK.
Thank you. We're running out of time, so in a few words.
In Austria, it's a question of utility. I think Austria has a very low cost for using mobile, whether it's mobile internet or in general. So it's a question, do people really have a need to always have a smartphone or not, is the question. But I think most people, they have a phone for making phone calls and texting. That's pretty much lowest common denominator.
Thank you, guys. Eric, Robin, Mark, and Giles, thank you very much for having joined us today. And please help me thank you, these guys.